SpaceX, I mean, everybody's heard of them at this point, right? Their whole deal is getting humanity to Mars, which, you gotta admit, sounds kind of like something out of a sci-fi movie. But then they go and pull off these tests, and it's like, hold on, is this real life or what?
Seriously.
You guys sent in some articles about SpaceX literally catching a giant rocket booster in midair, like right after launching a spaceship. And yeah, you read that right. It's every bit as crazy as it sounds. So, ready to dive into this thing?
Absolutely, yeah. One for the history books, no question.
For sure. So, last Sunday, down in Boca Chica, Texas, that's where SpaceX has their Starship launch site. And get this. The Super Heavy booster, we're talking taller than the Statue of Liberty here, ignites its engines and lifts off, carrying the Starship spacecraft.
Wow.
They hit an altitude of like 40 miles up, and that's where things get wild. I mean, that's where things get really interesting. I don't even know what the right word is. But so at that point, the Super Heavy booster, which is basically the first stage of this whole system, it detaches from the Starship spacecraft, which is up top.
Right, the second stage.
Okay, makes sense. So the booster's heading back to Earth, but it's not just gonna plop down in the ocean, is it?
Nope, not this time. So instead of the usual ocean splashdown that we're used to seeing with rockets, this thing's designed to come back to the launch pad, standing upright, ready to fly again.
I don't even know if I can picture that.
It's called a catch landing. And if they can actually pull it off consistently, it could totally change the game for space travel.
No kidding. Okay, but first it's got to survive that whole fiery trip back down to Earth.
Exactly. The booster is moving insanely fast. So to slow down and steer, they're using some pretty incredible technology.
Oh.
So first, they reignite 3 of its Raptor engines, firing them in a super controlled way to manage how fast it's coming down.
Like hitting the brakes, but like a million times more intense.
Exactly. And on top of that, they use these grid fins, picture
Right.
giant wings, but they move and adjust, kind of like a skydiver maneuvering through the air.
Oh, okay. Wild.
Yeah, so those grid fins are what helps guide the booster back towards the launch site with ridiculous accuracy.
Okay, so we've got this massive booster falling back to Earth, engines blazing, using these super high-tech grid fins to steer, and it's going for a pretty small target, right?
Right, and that's where the SpaceX launch tower comes in. They basically turned it into this massive, I don't even know what to call it, a catcher's mitt, I guess, for this huge rocket booster.
That's crazy.
It's got these huge mechanical arms reaching out, ready to grab the booster as it comes in.
Wow. And they managed to pull this off.
They did. The booster, guided by those grid fins, basically just slid right between the tower's arms, locking onto these special bars designed for the whole thing.
That's got to be some next level precision. I saw that Elon Musk even posted about it on X, like right when it happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, he said the tower has caught the rocket. Those exclamation points, I mean, that says it all.
I can only imagine what it was like in mission control. They must have been going nuts.
Well, I bet. But, okay, this catch landing, it's not just, like, a cool visual, right? This is a big deal for the whole future of space travel, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Reusability has basically been the holy grail of spaceflight forever. You know?
Right.
Like, think about it. Rockets, they're used once, and then that's it. They're done. Imagine if, like, every time a plane flew, they just scrapped it afterwards.
Yeah, air travel would be like $1 million a ticket.
Exactly. And space travel's always faced that same problem.
Right.
But by designing these rockets, like Starship, to be reusable, that's how SpaceX wants to bring the cost of launching stuff, and eventually people, way, way down.
So this catch landing is a huge step towards making space travel actually affordable, which means more people can actually experience it.
Yeah.
That's wild.
It's huge. It's absolutely huge. But while the booster is busy, sticking that perfect landing back on Earth, the Starship spacecraft is off on its own little adventure up in space, right?
Oh, right. We can't forget about Starship. So where was it going after they separated?
So the booster heads back to the launch site, but Starship keeps going up, aiming for a splashdown in the Indian Ocean, somewhere off the coast of Australia.
And we're talking, like, seriously fast here, right?
Oh yeah. During this test flight, Starship hit a top speed of 17,000 miles per hour.
17,000 miles an hour. Dude, that's like, I can't even comprehend that.
Yeah, that's moving. But it's one thing to get up to that speed. Getting a spacecraft back from those kinds of velocities without it burning up, that takes some really, really smart engineering.
Right. Okay, so that's got to be where those heat shielding tiles come in.
Exactly. Getting back into the Earth's atmosphere, that's like the most intense part of any spaceflight.
Yeah.
As it comes back down, the friction with the air, it creates insane heat.
I was reading about that, like how Starship has this crazy pinkish purple hue around it during re-entry. That's that super hot plasma you were talking about earlier, right?
Yep, that's it. And add stuff can get up to thousands of degrees. So yeah, those heat shielding tiles are vital. They're what protects the spacecraft from basically just burning up on re-entry.
So how'd Starship do on this flight? Those tiles actually hold up.
They did, actually, and like remarkably well.
Wow.
The cameras on board got the whole re-entry sequence on video, and Starship looked, it looked great even after going through all that.
That's got to be some top-notch design work on those tiles.
Oh, absolutely. It's a testament to the engineering for sure.
Yeah.
And it kind of shows how SpaceX does things.
Yeah.
They try something, they see what happens, they learn, they make it better for next time.
So even though this one wasn't carrying any astronauts yet, it was still important for figuring out how to do it for real down the line.
For sure. Every win, not quite a win, gives them more data to work with.
Okay, so Starship goes to the edge of space, comes screaming back down through the atmosphere, and then it's time for the grand finale, splashdown.
And that's where things get, well, a little more dramatic.
Oh. How so?
Well, splashdown, it kind of sounds simple, right? But you got to remember, we're still talking about something coming in from space, hitting the water at ridiculous speed.
Right, it's not like a gentle belly flop in the pool.
No, not quite.
Yeah.
Starship had to use its one remaining engine to basically flip itself around, kind of like a skydiver getting into position right before they hit the water.
Right.
And then, of course, there's the whole impact of hitting the ocean at that speed, which is no joke.
Yeah, that's got to be a lot of force.
A lot of force. So Starship did touch down in the water, and according to Elon Musk himself, it landed precisely on target. But...
Uh-oh, there's a but?
There's a but.
Yeah.
Right after splashdown, the live stream, it showed Starship kind of tipping over.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was, there was an explosion.
Whoa, hold on. An explosion? Was that on purpose, or did something go wrong?
That part's not totally clear yet. Sometimes companies do what they call a controlled detonation after a splashdown, just to make sure the spacecraft is disposed of safely.
Oh, okay.
So that's possible.
So even with that whole, fiery ending, Elon Musk seemed happy with how it all went down.
He did. And that makes sense because SpaceX, they've always been big on the idea of embracing failure as part of the process.
Interesting.
Yeah, each test, good or bad, gives them info, helps them tweak the design of Starship. It makes it more ready for future missions.
Speaking of future missions, let's talk about that. This test flight was nuts, but where does Starship even go from here?
Oh, that's where it gets really, really cool. SpaceX has some seriously ambitious plans for Starship.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they see it as the ultimate space workhorse, able to haul cargo and one day actual people to crazy places like the moon, Mars, maybe even beyond.
Okay, let's break that down. First up, the moon. NASA's got that whole Artemis program, right? Getting astronauts back on the lunar surface. What's Starship's role in that?
So NASA actually picked SpaceX to create a special version of Starship, specifically to act as the lunar lander for the Artemis missions.
So this thing that just splashed down in the ocean could one day be taking humans to the moon. That's insane.
It is pretty wild.
That is wild.
Yeah, this lunar Starship, it's designed to carry astronauts from lunar orbit down to the surface of the moon, and importantly, back up again.
Okay, and then there's Mars. We all know Elon Musk wants to make humanity a multiplanetary species with Mars as the first stop. How does Starship fit into that? So we're talking about sending people to Mars. That's huge.
Huge doesn't even begin to cover it. Mars, it's a whole different ballgame compared to the moon. Way harsher. To get people there and back safely, you need something seriously tough, something that can not only make the trip but actually land and ideally take off again. SpaceX seems to think Starship's the answer.
Wow. So this test flight, as crazy as it was just one tiny step for Starship, but a massive leap towards actually making all this stuff happen.
Exactly. Each successful test gets them a little bit closer to that goal, that vision of humans living on multiple planets.
It really feels like we're living in a sci-fi novel right now,
Kind of does, yeah.
And this whole idea of reusable spacecraft, we were talking about that earlier, it's easy to get caught up in the visuals, the rocket fire, all that. But the cost thing, that's huge too, right?
It's massive. Think about it. If we built a new plane for every flight, only the super rich could even think about flying.
Right.
Reusability, that's the key to making space accessible for more than just billionaires.
Right.
More research, more exploration, maybe even space tourism one day.
So SpaceX isn't just launching rockets, they're launching a whole new era. That's pretty wild to think about.
It really is. And this test flight, I mean, the catch landing, the trip to space, the splashdown, even that crazy explosion at the end, it shows you they're not afraid to, like, really push the limits.
It's true. They're not afraid to experiment, even if it means something might go boom.
And that's what sets them apart. They're not afraid to fail, and they learn from it every time, whether it's a perfect launch or something blows up. That's how they've come so far, so fast.
They're not just building rockets, they're building the future.
And inspiring a whole new generation of, like, you know, the people who are going to actually make this stuff happen. The scientists, the engineers, the dreamers.
Yeah, it's a pretty amazing time to be alive, honestly, with all this stuff going on in space. SpaceX is definitely leading the way, showing us all what's possible.
They're pushing the boundaries of what we thought we knew, making us rethink what humans are capable of.
Well said. Well said. So, to kind of wrap things up here, this latest Starship test, it wasn't just about, like, testing a hunk of metal. It was about testing what we thought was possible.
Yeah, it's like they took something straight out of science fiction and said, we're going to do this right now.
And it makes you wonder, if they can do all this in just a few years, what are we going to see in 10 years? 20 years? It's mind-blowing.
That's the question, isn't it? I mean, we look up at the stars. We've been doing it forever, wondering what's out there. Now we're actually going out there, figuring it out. Pretty exciting time to be alive.
It is. So we've covered a lot of ground today. For everyone listening who wants to, like, really dig into the details of SpaceX and Starship, we'll link to those articles you guys sent in. Check out the show notes for all that good stuff. But until next time, keep looking up.
Absolutely. Keep exploring, keep asking questions, and most importantly, never stop dreaming big.